Welcome. Welcome to those of you who've already shared these reflection experiences with us, and welcome to those of you who might be joining us for the first time. What are we trying to do? For those of you who are new to this, we're trying to look at some of the most important issues we face on our journey through space-time, ordinary men and women in space-time, in the very difficult human situation in which we all live today. After our last session, I received some very interesting questions. I want to share them with you. Some of these questions might have been your own also. This one was about dreams and spiritual experience. Are dreams, the sort of dreams we all know, are they spiritual experience if they have a spiritual content? And the reference was to the Bible, to the dreams recorded in the Old Testament, the key dreams that come in the New Testament, like Joseph, who we're told saw in a dream what was going to happen, and that he should take the child and Mary, his mother, and go off into Egypt, into safety. So are dreams with a spiritual content, are they visions? Or is a vision just a dream where the content, the message, has a more spiritual nature than the dreams we already have, we're used to in our everyday life? This continued to people who are asking about a definition for what is authentic spiritual experience. That means spiritual experience, it is not exactly the same as physical experience, psychological experience. The interesting thing here is that it's a Western mindset. We must have accurate definitions. We must know definitive answers. We must have facts that we can control. Then another question was the sort of experiences I have during meditation, a sense of calmness, of presence, of peace, of stillness, that I can't achieve any other way. Are these unusual experiences, spiritual experience, or are they just the result of practicing sitting quietly, repeating a phrase, watching my breathing, or any of the other very simple practices of meditation techniques that you will have heard about or maybe use yourself? Another question leading from that was, is it possible for us human beings to be so transformed that we're able to experience something like emptiness, nothingness, mystery, names that have been used in all the religious traditions throughout the centuries for spiritual experience or a genuine experience of the absolute reality we call God by dozens of different names. Now, on those impressive questions, very impressive questions, I wonder if they came out of a genuine reflection on the daily lives of the people who asked the questions, or whether they were just another bit of intellectual gymnastics where we need to know, to be in control, to have it right. This is a data gathering era, and we're all victims of it. Now, in these reflections together, we're not looking for ultimate or final definitive answers to questions. We're raising the questions. We're looking at a basic understanding for our questions and something that helps us to go on reflecting personally, individually, out of my experience, out of my truth, not out of somebody else's teaching. So, leading out of our last reflection together, I want to pick up just a basic understanding, something actually which lies underneath all those questions even though they sound so different. They're all referring to human consciousness, our ability to be aware of reality. Now, let's remind ourselves of some very simple facts. Number one, this is a model of the human brain. We all have one. It's sitting there between our ears, and it's allowing us to communicate at the moment. We have a body with senses. We can hear, we can see, we can taste, we can feel, and so on. And the interaction between the information of our senses, the things we can see, the things we can hear, feel, touch, taste, and this organ, the brain, mediates to us our entire experience of physical reality. And we are awake to that experience, we are fully awake, fully conscious, or there are different levels of intensity or clarity in our human consciousness. We're used to this. We know that people can be physically unconscious, where no matter how they are being stimulated, people speaking to them, touching them, and so on, they are incapable of responding to the stimuli. A physical unconsciousness. We know that our ordinary everyday consciousness of what is going on can be very distracted. And yet, in spite of that, we can have underneath a level of awareness of something that is very important to us, that is not strictly in the focus, in the forefront. The subconscious. And, one of the most powerful and ordinary examples of this is how a young mother has a subconscious awareness of her small children, even when they're not within sight. She never really loses this level of awareness. She may be playing with the baby here, and the 5-year-old has suddenly walked into a dangerous situation there, and she's alert to it, even though she couldn't see it, and even though it didn't look as though she was aware of her 4-year-old or her 5-year-old wandering off towards the road. We all have this. We have an ordinary everyday waking consciousness. We have a level of subconsciousness. We can all be unconscious. And if we didn't have this brain and our hands and eyes and ears, we wouldn't be able to interact with reality at all. So is all our possibility of experience, of reality, dependent on the brain and the senses? This is the question. It's the question of, is there something other than physical reality? Is there something that is not brain and sense dependent? We call it spirit. Is there a possibility of experiencing a reality, an ultimate reality, that isn't dependent on the brain and the senses? If that experience is experience of spirit, then we also must be partially spirit somehow, no? Now, this is one of the questions that's been with us all through the centuries, and it underlines the questions that I spoke about a moment ago that were raised at the end of our talk. Spiritual awareness. An awareness, a consciousness that's not brain dependent, not dependent on the mind or the emotions, the imagination or the memory. What could this possibly be like? Now, this is very difficult because we're talking about something that we can't really describe with our ordinary everyday language, which is used to describe physical things. And so usually those who have tried to teach us from their own experience have used symbols. I'm going to use a very simple one. Suppose you lived in a country where you had never seen or tasted a mugawami fruit. And somebody said, "You don't know it? You've never tasted one?" I said, "No, never seen one. What does it look like?" And they said, "Well, it's a little bit like an orange. It's about the same size as an ordinary orange and almost the same colour. It has a smooth skin. You can peel it off, and when you do, inside, then it's divided into segments like an orange, and it's juicy, but it doesn't quite taste like an orange, and it doesn't quite smell like an orange. It's a mugawami fruit, and it's not an orange." Now, you wouldn't know very much about this strange fruit until you actually see one. And then if it looks like an orange, how are you going to be able to tell the difference? It doesn't taste like an orange. It has a very distinct taste. So once you have tasted a mugawali fruit, you are able to know the difference between an orange and this different fruit. It's a very simple example. You know, it's used over and over again in the literature of our traditions of spirituality. One of the greatest and clearest writers about the spiritual journey of ordinary everyday men and women was a Spanish woman, Teresa from Avila, who used the example like this. She said it's as though you're on the journey, you're learning more, you're understanding more about human consciousness, the brain-dependent awareness of reality, and you're knowing more about the possibility of what could be spiritual awareness. But you come to a point where you can taste the difference. And she used just ordinary glasses of water, and she said as though you have two fountains of water, and the water seems to come from the same source, and when you pick up the glasses they look the same, the water looks the same, they don't smell any different. It's only when you taste the water you say, my goodness, there's a very big difference in taste between this water and that water. It's discerning the difference between the brain-dependent experience and the experience that is not dependent, is spiritual experience. And the best we can do is say, well, we can taste the difference. We can try and describe the difference afterwards, but we can't really say it's absolutely that. We can't define it as we can experiences that are physical and psychological. It has a different taste. Now, could this be just imagination? Yes, of course it could. And it's discerning the difference between what is genuinely a gift of spiritual relationship, spirit to spirit, and what is the result of my ability to think and feel and imagine and so on. Nearly all those who have become expert, as it were, in waking up to this spiritual ability that we have, guide us, tell us, show us, mostly symbolically, and we trust them not because of what they say, like Teresa with her 2 glasses of water, but because of the way they lived. There was something about the way they lived their lives, no matter what they did or did not do, where they lived, how they lived, which religious tradition they belonged to. There's an authenticity about their lives which is characteristic of a genuine experience, spirit to spirit. We could perhaps say, well, the authenticity means there was complete truth in their lives. No lies, no pretense, no selfish ambition, no jealousy, no envy, no fear of not being important. There was a clarity and a simplicity and a truth. Some of them also wrote to give us guidelines, like Ignatius, as to how we can test out if we feel, I have experienced something, tasted something that is different. What I can notice changes in the way I interact with people, with things, my understanding of myself, an authenticity, a simplicity, a truth. So we've got something there to reflect on during the coming month. I suggest again to you that you don't try and reflect on all the aspects of what we just shared, but just take out one thought, one phrase, one symbol to start with, and really just chew over it in the light of what you know, what you experience, what you want. Once you have chosen it, then reflect deeply on it, then somehow record it for yourself. Write a little note, sing a little song, do a little doodle, keep a journal, doesn't matter what. Something for yourself, but don't just let it disappear. And you're starting again the next time. Last month I also suggested that a practice you could put into your everyday life, sort of wake up and stay awake to this level of your journey, to this level of consciousness, was the practice of holding the moment. Choosing a moment in your day, and several moments in the day, but start with one, where you just stop and just simply become aware, through the brain, through the memory, through the feeling, of that you're here. I'm physically here. This is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm sensing, this is what I'm seeing. And then let it be silent for a moment. Choose a very ordinary moment, when you're buttering the bread at breakfast, when you're turning off the ignition key in the car, when you get home at night, as you open the computer, doesn't matter what. But choose a moment and hold that moment. It's very simple. It's extremely effective if you do it. That's our problem. It's easy, but we have to do it. And I wish you the joy of discovery of this during the next month.